In January 2025, Al Hilal and Neymar announced a mutual termination of contract. The official language was diplomatic, by mutual consent. The financial reality was less elegant. A club that had committed $75 million per year to a player who delivered fewer than a handful of competitive appearances decided, quietly, that the asset was no longer worth carrying. Neymar walked away, and crucially, he walked away leaving money on the table. Reported values still owed under the contract were abandoned in exchange for freedom. He then signed for Santos, the club where he started, for a fraction of what he earned in a single month in Riyadh. That sequence, sovereign wealth fund to Brazilian second division wages, is not a fall from grace. It is the final chapter of a business model reaching its natural conclusion. This is not a story about bad luck or bad injuries. This is a financial audit of the most monetized footballer in history. And the numbers are not what you think. To understand Neymar the asset, you need to start where the asset was manufactured. Santos Football Club, Sao Paulo State, 2009. A 17-year-old with extraordinary ability signs his first professional contract. Within 12 months, every major European club is watching. Real Madrid makes direct contact. Chelsea sends representatives. Barcelona opens a file. Nike opens a checkbook. Here is the detail that never makes the highlight reels. The Santos to Barcelona transfer in 2013 was not primarily a football decision. It was the conclusion of a commercial negotiation that had been running for 3 years. Nike held the kit sponsorship for both Santos and Barcelona. Neymar was already a Nike athlete, one of their most marketable global properties. Moving him from Brazil to Spain's most visible club in the world's most watched league was not a sporting relocation. It was a brand activation. The transfer fee itself became a legal scandal. Barcelona declared they paid 57 million euros. Brazilian tax authorities eventually determined the real figure was closer to $95 million, with payments routed through the family holding company, through Santos, through third-party structures that obscured the true cost. Neymar's father, Neymar Sr., was not just his parent, he was his commercial director, his agent, and the architect of every contract his son would sign for the next 15 years. The structure established at Santos was the template for everything that followed. Football performance was the product, financial extraction was the business. At Barcelona, Neymar was genuinely extraordinary. The 2014-15 season, the treble, the Champions League final against Juventus in Berlin, Messi, Suarez, and Neymar, the most devastating attacking trio in club football history. This is what makes the next decision so revealing. In 2017, Real Madrid wanted Neymar. The offer was serious. The sporting project was credible. He would have been the central figure, not the third option behind Messi and Suarez, but the undisputed star of the Bernabeu. He chose PSG. Not because PSG was a better football project. In 2017, PSG had never reached a Champions League final. They had won nothing in Europe. He chose Paris because of a number: 222 million euros, the release clause in his Barcelona contract, a number inserted apparently as a formality, a deterrent so large that no club would rationally trigger it. PSG triggered it.
And that decision, made in a boardroom in Doha, approved by Qatar Sports Investments, executed in a single week, did not just buy a footballer, it permanently broke the transfer market. Before August 2017, no player had ever been sold for more than 105 million euros. That was Paul Pogba 12 months earlier, and it had felt like an aberration. Neymar, at 222 million euros, didn't just double the record, it established a new logic. If you have state money, market rules don't apply. Every fee that came after was calculated in relation to that number. Mbappe eventually costs 180 million euros. Bellingham costs 103 million euros plus variables. Wirtz costs 150 million euros. The clubs paying those fees, Bundesliga clubs, Serie A clubs, clubs without sovereign wealth behind them, are paying the compound interest on a decision made in Paris in 2017. The bubble that is now suffocating European football started with one transfer. But here is what the financial audit reveals about Neymar specifically. PSG didn't buy a footballer, they bought a commercial property. In 6 seasons at PSG, Neymar played fewer than half the available matches. Injuries, suspensions, absence. In the seasons where PSG came closest to winning the Champions League, 2019-20 final, 2021 semi-final, Neymar contributed. But the pattern across 6 years was consistent. The asset depreciated faster than the contract allowed. PSG paid 222 million euros to acquire him. They paid his wages, reported at 36 million euros net per year for 6 seasons. The total investment exceeded 440 million euros. He never won the Champions League in Paris. The structural problem was visible from the beginning if you looked at the incentives. Neymar's commercial income, sponsorships, image rights, personal brand deals, was largely independent of his football performance. He earned from Puma, from Red Bull, from multiple Brazilian brands, regardless of whether PSG won or lost, regardless of whether he played or was injured. His father's holding company structured his contracts to maximize guaranteed income. Performance bonuses existed, but the base salary was the foundation, and the base salary was guaranteed whether he played 36 minutes or 36 games. When your income doesn't depend on your performance, your relationship to performance changes. Not necessarily consciously, but structurally, the incentive to take physical risks, to push through a recovery, to play through discomfort, to sacrifice your body for a result is weakened. Neymar was not lazy, he was rationally responding to his own contract structure. Then came Al Hilal, Saudi Arabia, August 2023, $75 million per year. The sports washing era of football was producing extraordinary offers. Ronaldo had gone, Benzema had gone, Neymar, 31 years old, with a history of serious injuries, coming off a difficult final season at PSG, accepted. The football justification was thin. The financial logic was perfect for Neymar. He suffered an ACL injury in his 4th match. He returned briefly, then spent the majority of his contract in a rehabilitation room, delivering fewer than 10 competitive appearances across 18 months. The termination in January 2025 was framed as mutual, but the detail that the audit cannot ignore is this. Neymar reportedly maintained a commercial agreement with Saudi Arabia until 2034. As an athlete, the contract ended. As a brand, the relationship continues. That distinction is the entire Neymar model in a single sentence. The football stopped. The commercial infrastructure did not. Then came the epilogue nobody in European football expected. Santos, January 31st, 2025. Official announcement. He was presented at Villa Belmiro to a reception that felt less like a football signing and more like a homecoming after a war. 12 years after leaving as a teenager destined for Barcelona, he returned wearing the number 10 he first made famous.
He recovered from injury. In February 2026, 13 years after his original departure, he played again. A convincing performance in a heavy victory, at 32 years old in the Brazilian State Championship. Not for $75 million a year, for Santos. The Santos return does not rewrite the financial audit, but it adds a dimension the model didn't account for. The athlete, stripped of the sovereign wealth and the commercial machinery, chose to play football.
Whether that represents genuine rehabilitation, the athlete reclaiming himself from the asset, or simply the final act of a brand maintaining relevance before the 2026 World Cup in North America, is the question only the next 12 months will answer. Because the Copa del Mundo is the stated objective, and a World Cup is not just a football tournament for Neymar. It is a commercial event, the largest brand activation on Earth. One final stage, one final contract cycle. The model may not be finished yet. Here is what this audit teaches us beyond football. The Neymar model is not unique to sport. It is the story of what happens when a human being is valued primarily as a commercial asset rather than as a performing professional. The incentive structures around Neymar, from Santos to Barcelona to PSG to Al Hilal, were designed to extract maximum financial value at each stage. They succeeded. Neymar earned over $1 billion across his career. His father's company is wealthy. His sponsors generated returns. His clubs received commercial exposure. What none of those structures optimized for was the longevity of the athlete. Real Madrid learned this the hard way during the Galacticos era. You cannot pay for the brand and neglect the player. The asset depreciates faster than the contract. PSG learned it at a cost of 440 million euros. Al Hilal learned it at 75 million per year. And every club that bought into the market Neymar created, forced to inflate their own fees in response to the 222 million euro logic, paid the compound interest on a decision made in Paris in 2017. The universal lesson is this: when you treat a human being as a financial instrument, you optimize for the contract, not the career. And contracts have end dates. Careers, if managed correctly, can last much longer than the instrument allows. Santos to Barcelona was a Nike deal. Barcelona to PSG was a 222 million euro market disruption. PSG to Al Hilal was a guaranteed salary for a depreciating asset. Al Hilal to Santos was the footballer returning to where the asset began, before the machinery arrived. Every decision maximized the contract. The question the next 12 months will answer is whether, finally, one decision was made for the football. The audit is complete. Meeting adjourned.